What if I told you that God stopped heaven because of you? Not when you were strong, smiling, or celebrating victories, but in that silent moment when no one saw your pain, and even then, you chose to worship. It was the exact moment when you could have screamed in frustration, surrendered to bitterness, or walked away from it all. But instead, you whispered a thank you with tears in your eyes. Few realize it, but there is a kind of worship that doesn't echo in churches or appear on pulpits. It's born in the trenches of the soul, in the darkness of the spirit, in the invisibility of faith. And it was precisely that kind of worship that made God smile. Have you ever wondered why your praise feels lonely? Why, even when you do everything right, the world around you stays silent. No answers, no applause, no immediate relief. It's because what you offered in the midst of pain, waiting, and confusion was not ordinary. It was pure. It was rare. It was powerful. What you went through was a spiritual war, and your weapon was not a scream, control, or desperation. Your weapon was the silence that trusts, the tear that surrenders, the praise that defies hell itself. And if you stay until the end, you'll discover why this kind of praise, the kind born in the breaking, not only moved the heart of God, but also activated hidden promises that are now about to be fulfilled. There is a hidden revelation that only those who worship in the dark can access. And today, it will be delivered to you, not as a theory, but as a living activation. I say, this not as someone above you, but as someone who has worshiped alone, who has sung without a voice, prayed without strength, held their chest in the middle of the night, and still chose to worship. I know how much it hurts, but I also know what happens when heaven leans in to hear someone who still dares to. Say, you are good, get ready, because what seemed to have been ignored is about to be recognized. And what was offered in secret will be rewarded in the open. If this message has already touched your spirit, write in the comments, I praised in the dark. Let the angels see where the true worshipers are rising from. And if you feel this, calling is for you. Subscribe now, because the next revelations will go even deeper. No one saw when you closed your eyes and lifted your hands, feeling nothing but pain. No one heard the muffled sound of your tears, mixed with a whisper of worship. The world didn't know, but all of heaven fell silent to listen. Because there is a kind of praise that doesn't need a microphone, a stage, or immediate response. It's the kind that is born when everything inside you screams, give up, but something deeper whispers, trust. And in that exact moment when you chose to trust, even without understanding, even without feeling, even without seeing, something eternal happened. The Creator smiled. Yes, God smiled, because He saw you when no one else did. When the battle was silent, when the pain was invisible, when your cry had no human echo but resounded loudly in the spirit, you could have grown bitter. You could have walked away. You could have rebelled. But you didn't. You offered praise. And what you didn't know is that this praise was like a burst of light in the spiritual realm. A reverence so rare, so true, that heaven itself leaned in. What seemed like a small gesture, raising tired hands, taking a deep breath as you said, you are worthy, was in fact an offering of honor that only the truly marked can give. Because those who are sealed by the Spirit know that the value of praise is not in the sound, but in the blood of the battles you won inside without ever abandoning your faith, in the emotional blood of silent sacrifices. And God saw it all, and because He saw, He is now preparing a response that won't come as noise, but as glory, as a manifestation that no one will understand, but everyone will feel. Because when a chosen one praises in the dark, creation itself responds. And that's why, even without knowing, you touched the infinite, and something has already begun to move. And this is just the beginning. There is a kind of offering that cannot be bought, imitated, or fabricated. It rises not from the lips, but from the Spirit. It's not performed in front of crowds or sung from pulpits. It emerges quietly from broken hearts that still dare to believe. When you chose to worship through your sorrow, when your voice trembled but your heart still whispered His name, you offered heaven something exceedingly rare, a sacrifice wrapped in trust. And that trust raw, unfiltered, unpretentious released a fragrance so powerful it moved the atmosphere of eternity. You may not have realized it at the time. You were too overwhelmed, too tired, too human. But in that hidden place, your soul was spilling incense that only heaven could smell. The kind of incense that isn't crafted with perfection, but with surrender. And the moment that incense rose, carrying your pain, your tears, your halting hallelujahs, it touched the heart of the Almighty. That kind of worship doesn't fade into the air. It leaves a trail, a mark, a vibration in the eternal realm that declares, they still chose me. Because real worship isn't built in comfort. It is forged in fire. It's what happens when nothing makes sense, and yet you lift your hands anyway. When your mind is full of questions, but your soul still bows low. And this fragrance, this invisible, divine perfume of crushed obedience, it doesn't evaporate. It enters the throne room. It causes angels to stand still. It becomes a declaration that echoes beyond time. This one trusts me, even here. You didn't know that when you knelt in silence, heaven leaned in. You didn't hear the applause from the invisible realm when you chose reverence instead of resentment, but it happened. And it's still happening. That fragrance is still rising. And God has not forgotten it. Not a single sigh. Not a single moment of silent surrender has gone unnoticed. He has collected them all, like drops of oil. And soon, He will pour them back on you in glory. But what happens when the fragrance of your suffering becomes a weapon? Let's go deeper. You didn't see it, but the moment you chose to worship instead of weeping bitterness, the battlefield of the unseen realm shifted. While your body felt weak and your emotions were spiraling, your soul stood tall in a realm few ever glimpse. Because worship isn't just surrender, it's war. And when you sang through the shaking, when you whispered His name through the ache, you unleashed a force that even the powers of darkness could not withstand. You may have thought you were alone in that room, that your hallelujah bounced off the walls and faded into silence. But in truth, your praise was a thunderclap in the spirit. Demons trembled, chains cracked, lies broke. You didn't raise your voice to be heard. You raised your faith to be seen by heaven. And in doing so, you became more than just a believer. You became a warrior dressed in surrender. See, the enemy hoped the silence would crush you, that the unanswered prayers would harden your heart, that the storm would drown your voice. But instead, you worshipped. You lifted up what little you had left and offered it to the one who needed nothing, but cherished everything you gave. And that offering became a spiritual earthquake, because the war wasn't about your circumstances. It was about your allegiance. Would you still bow when blessings felt far away? Would you still declare His goodness when nothing around you looked good? And you did. You passed a test that cannot be faked or taught. A test only the marked can endure, and only the chosen can win. Your worship didn't just soothe your soul. It wounded the kingdom of darkness. It served notice to every lie, every fear, every curse. This soul belongs to God. This voice won't be silenced. This heart will not betray its maker. And heaven recorded every moment. Not to shame you, but to reward you openly for battles won in secret. But what if those battles weren't just meant to change you, but also to set others free? Let's unlock what happened next. They didn't hear your worship, but the prison did. The walls that surrounded your heart, the lies that tried to hold you back, the fear that whispered, "You'll never make it." All of it trembled when you sang. Because the power of praise isn't in its volume, it's in its defiance. It's in the quiet declaration, "I still believe." And that belief, raw, fragile, but relentless, has the authority to break chains no one else can see. Do you remember Paul and Silas? Beaten, shackled, thrown into a dungeon so dark, the air itself seemed thick with despair. They had every reason to complain, every justification to curse the injustice. But instead, they worshipped. Not when they were free, but while the chains still clung to their wrists. At midnight, the deepest part of the night, their voices rose, and the ground shook. The doors opened. The chains fell. That's not just a story. That's a blueprint. Because you, too, have been in a prison. Maybe not built of stone, but of doubt, of grief, of exhaustion. And yet you praised. You lifted. Your voice not because you were already free, but because you knew who was with you in the fire. And that kind of faith doesn't wait for breakthrough. It creates it. Your worship wasn't passive. It was prophetic. It told your circumstances what they had no right to control. It reminded the darkness that your light was not for sale. And every note you sang, every word you prayed, every breath you gave in surrender was a key. A key that didn't just unlock your prison, but prepared a way for others to find freedom through your example. So don't underestimate the sound of your faith. It didn't vanish. It echoed. It's still echoing. If you've ever felt your prison shake because you chose to worship anyway, write in the comments, "My chains heard me." Let the heavens record your testimony, and let others know that faith still sets the captives free. And now we go deeper into a realm where the world's silence is met by heaven's standing ovation. You were never clapping for yourself because no one else was. There was no spotlight, no recognition, no hand to pat your back when you chose to praise through the storm. You walked through fire, smiled through tears, gave without return. And still, it felt like the world stayed silent. People overlooked your sacrifice. They misunderstood your devotion. Some even mocked your faith, thinking it naive, fragile. But what they could not see was that while the earth ignored you, heaven applauded, because God never needed a crowd to measure your worth. His eyes saw what no one else did, the quiet obedience, the consistent faith, the love that kept flowing even when it was never returned. While others dismissed your worship as weakness, the courts of heaven wrote it down as glory. While they measured results, God measured your resolve. He heard your midnight prayers, your whispered yes when everything inside you screamed no more. And he smiled. It was never about perfection. It was always about persistence, about your willingness to trust without visible reward, about lifting hands with no one watching but him. And in the kingdom, that's not invisible. That's honorable. The realm of heaven is built on a different standard. There, the loudest voice is not the most eloquent. It's the most faithful. There, the crown doesn't go to the most successful. It goes to the most surrendered. So don't believe for a moment that your worship was wasted. Every act of devotion, every unseen sacrifice, every teardrop that fell in secret, it has been preserved. Not one has been forgotten. Heaven has not only witnessed your faith, it has honored it. And the reward is not just coming. It is already being formed. But what if the reward isn't just a blessing, but a transformation? Let's walk into the fire together. You thought the flame would destroy you. The pressure, the waiting, the silence, it felt unbearable. You walked through seasons that stripped you down to your core, where everything familiar vanished, and all that remained was a fragile whisper of faith. But the truth is that fire wasn't sent to kill you. It was sent to reveal you, because only in the furnace is gold separated from everything that doesn't belong. Only in the fire does glory begin to take form. You didn't just survive the flames. You were changed inside them. Your worship became deeper. Your identity became clearer. The old you, the one who depended on outcomes, applause, and feelings, began to fade. And in its place, something unshakable emerged. A soul not defined by circumstances, but by covenant. A spirit not moved by storms, but anchored in surrender. That kind of transformation cannot be taught. It must be endured. And heaven knew it. Heaven watched as you walked through the wilderness, not cursing God, but clinging to Him. While others ran, you stayed. While others broke, you bent and then stood again. That's why your worship now carries a different weight. It's not surface level. It's not borrowed. It's been forged, tested, proven. And the enemy knows it. He fears the version of you that came out of the fire. Because you're no longer dependent on comfort. You no longer flinch at silence. You no longer need clarity to trust. You've seen too much, lost too much, grown too much. And now, your voice has authority not because of what you say, but because of what you've survived. You didn't walk out of the fire empty-handed. You came out glowing, refined, set apart. And while the world still sees ashes, God sees oil, oil of joy, oil of anointing, oil that only flows from crushed places. Crushed things don't stay buried. They rise, and now, something in you is beginning to rise. You didn't realize it, but every time you chose to praise instead of complain, every time you whispered hope through pain, you are planting seeds. Not in earthly soil, but in divine ground. And while the world looked at your journey and saw delay, detour, or defeat, heaven saw preparation. A field being sown with faith, watered with worship, and nourished in silence. And now, in a time appointed by God, those seeds are stirring, quietly, powerfully, irrevocably. These are not ordinary seeds. They were not planted for applause. They were sown in secret, in rooms where you wept alone, in nights when your prayers went unanswered, in hours where all you had was a flicker of belief. But those seeds never died. They went deeper. And now, beneath the surface, something sacred is breaking through. Not just a breakthrough in circumstances, but a birthing of destiny. Because what God is preparing is not just an answer. It's a legacy, a calling, a testimony that will ripple through generations. The worship you gave when no one was watching is producing fruit the world cannot ignore. Open doors that no man can shut. Restoration that defies logic. Favor that doesn't make sense, because heaven always repays what was sown in sacrifice with a harvest of glory. And it's not just for you. What's about to unfold through your life will touch others. Your story will be a path. Your praise will be a torch. Your scars will become maps for those still walking through fire. And when they ask how you made it, you'll say, I didn't stop worshiping. That was the difference. That was the seed. And that was enough. So stand still now. Breathe, feel it. Something holy is moving beneath your feet. A response from heaven, a wave of glory. Not loud, but certain. Not rushed, but perfect. Reward is near, and it's greater than anything you expected. Because your worship was never in vain. Not made with hands. Not raised with stone. But every time you chose praise instead of panic, trust instead of bitterness, tears instead of silence, you built an altar. Not in a church, not on a stage, but in the hidden terrain of your soul. An altar no eye could see, but every angel could find. It stands tall in the spirit, glowing with every surrendered moment, every whispered, still I believe, every decision to keep walking, even when your legs were trembling. This altar is alive. It holds the fire of your process, the fragrance of your pain, and the oil of your obedience. And now, God himself is stepping onto it, not to judge, but to dwell. Because the altar wasn't built for man. It was built for presence. And the presence is here. This is why the warfare increased. Why the silence stretched. Why the pruning felt cruel. The altar was being formed. And now that it's ready, what was once a place of tears will become a place of visitation. Glory is coming, not because you earned it, but because you hosted. Because you made room. Because you never stopped building, even when no one noticed. So breathe deep now. What was private is about to become prophetic. What was intimate will become influential. You didn't just survive. You established a dwelling place for God's glory to rest. And that glory will change everything. You thought the silence was abandonment, that the long nights of unanswered prayer were divine distance. But now you see, it wasn't rejection. It was revelation. God wasn't ignoring you. He was engraving you in the shadows, in the stillness, in the ache. He was shaping a name over your life that no man could give you and no hell could. Erased. Chosen, not casually, not conditionally, but eternally. And that choosing wasn't proven by the blessings you received, but by the fire you withstood, by the praise you lifted with trembling hands, by the faith you kept alive when all logic said it should die. Heaven didn't mark you because you performed. Heaven marked you because you endured. And in that endurance, something sacred was born. Identity. You don't need to strive to be seen anymore, because you've already been recognized by the only one whose recognition matters. You don't need to wear the masks the world offers, because your face has already been kissed by glory. You are not who the pain tried to make you. You are not who the enemy whispered you were. You are the one God saw in the secret, the one who said yes in the dark, the one who never stopped reaching upward. This isn't the end of your story. It's the unveiling of who you've truly been all along. A chosen one, refined, not ruined, hidden, not forgotten, called, not common. Now, rise into that name. Let your heart remain open, not just to what you've heard, but to what's now awakening within you. This was not just a message. It was a confirmation. If your spirit felt it, right below, I worshiped in the fire. Let heaven record your faith. Let others see the echo of courage rising in you. And if this ignited something deeper inside you, subscribe now, because the next message may be the one that unlocks the door you've been waiting in front of for years. We are not done. You are not alone. The Spirit is still speaking. We'll meet again in the next divine calling.